Okay, cool. So yeah, as I said, you've had like a success that kind of head and shoulders like over some of the clients that we've had working with us. And I think that I know what some of the reasons are, and obviously part of the reason is also that you have a great product and like a great team as well. So it's been a pleasure working with you for the last, I think it's almost like 2 years and a half now. So in particular, what was the biggest challenge that you had before working with us?
I think that, there's a couple of things. So, I was doing a lot of work myself to, let's say find articles where, we would be a good fit to be included in, finding emails manually or using our tool to find emails myself, and then, reaching out LinkedIn or reaching out by email. So essentially the challenge was the time aspect, right? Is, I only have a certain amount of time in a day trying to run a business. So initially, that was a challenge, was time, and obviously also automating them, somewhat automating the process. I could
Mhm.
I can do things myself and I can automate to a certain degree, but having someone that their full-time job essentially as a contractor was to perform this task, um, knows the in and outs better than I do. Also, the copywriting, I'm not much of a copywriter, so being able to reach out properly to try to get Uplead or our business included in some of these articles, was a challenge. So piecing a lot of things together myself, using your service saved me a ton of time because I was able to just essentially, maybe do some rough approvals once a week or once a month you know, on going through the approval process you go through. And other than that, there was no really other work on my end except to just pay for the service, and the job was getting done for me. So essentially, it took a lot of work off my plate, it saved me a lot of time. So I think that
Mhm.
would be the biggest challenge, was the time aspect.
Cool. And like anything in terms of like the traffic, like any traffic goals that you had, maybe you weren't seeing some like enough traffic coming to the site because you didn't have a content promotion plan in place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we kind of always knew from the beginning that we wanted search and organic and SEO to be part of our strategy, right? Not like the only strategy, but part of an overall strategy. So we definitely decided early on in the business to dedicate resources, funds towards search. So we didn't, I guess, initially have a huge traffic goal in mind or any specifics. We just knew that writing content on our blog alone wasn't enough, right?
Hmm.
There's multi, it's kind of like, I think I look at it as like there's three things. You got to have the content, and you have to have the promotion or the outreach, and then you have to have let's say the technical side, on-site SEO. And yeah, so those are kind of the three pillars, and if you just do one of those three and you don't do the others, then you're not going to have the success. So
Hmm.
I knew that just from being in and around B2B brands, customer acquisition, understanding how things work. I knew that to begin with. Um so I knew that this was that the promotion part was going to be a big portion of it. um and um and yeah, that's why
Hmm.
I reached out to you.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense. And so I guess this kind of ties in into the next question. So why was this important for you to solve?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started the company, it's bootstrap. There's not a lot of funding. I was doing everything. So I was doing customer support. I was doing product demos. I was doing this, the outreach, the promotion. I was doing content, right? I was just, I was kind of just doing everything.
Mhm.
And in order to be able to, grow the business, you only can do everything for so long. So at some point, you need to start bringing in, team members. You need to start working with different vendors and contractors to allow me to free up my time to think a little bit higher level, to think about the bigger picture of the business. And obviously, when you're first starting, it's hard to, unless you're well funded, it's hard to just do all that at once and hire all these people and do it. So being bootstrapped, it was a challenge, but as we started growing the business and as we saw a little revenue, we said, I had the decision to make. I can just, keep this business smaller. I can start to grow it. In order to grow it, you need help. So yeah, so using your service definitely freed up time that I was able to, put to higher level items that I would, to grow the business, much more
Mhm.
substantially.
Yeah. And so this is next question is something else that I'm also curious to know about because I don't think I've ever asked you. Is like, have you tried other services before working with us? And if so, why, in your opinion, like these other solutions didn't work?
So we did use other solutions. We did try other solutions. I guess with outreach, there's a lot of ways you can do it, right? There's like kind of the method that you use with it, which is the manual outreach, which is that's one approach, and there's a number of other approaches. So obviously, we wanted to always do things in a method that a it's at least somewhat scalable, and b it's do things by the book. We don't want to get any penalties, and we're building this business for the long term. So obviously initially there were partners that we had where we could that would help us on the promotion side, and there were different freelancers we use, but no one really was able to give us much consistency, right? Like consistency in terms of, hey, here's what our expectations are as far as the outreach is concerned. Here's where our goals are. Here's a rough estimate of what costs are going to be, and we understand those costs are somewhat fixed, so we kind of have an expectation of what to expect every month. So in working with you, it was the first service, at least on the manual outreach side, where it was pretty predictable, right? It was okay. Here's what we can expect to see from this each month. Here's what we can expect to pay. Here's the quality. It's done the correct way. So, that's what we liked about it, and that's obviously why we continue to use your services, because we know what to expect, and we know what we're getting, and we know we can budget out. We can budget this out, and yeah, obviously we're having success with it. So.
Mhm. So what was your biggest objection in starting to work with us, if you had any in the beginning?
Well, I mean, initially we were, small and bootstrapped. So obviously cost is one big aspect that was on our minds, that we're worried about. And, I think even when we engaged you initially, it was, maybe a little bit of a stretch for us to say, hey, I don't know if we can make this happen long term, but like, I think it has to be a part of our long-term strategy. So we have to try this. So the cost was important. The other objection was, the quality aspect, right? Are we going to be able to reach the right, sites and people that where we're going to get, high quality, promotion, high quality outreach? So, obviously there's a bunch of junk and spammy stuff out there. So we wanted to make sure that quality was, important, in what we do. And also, it was somewhat scalable, so and predictable. So I think those were kind of like the things that we were worried about or thinking about when we began to engage. And then also, I think at the time, your service was new, so there wasn't like a ton of case studies or testimonials or something that we could just go based off of. So that was another one where it was like, well, we'll see where this goes. It's unclear. But no, it's been a pleasure working with you. Yeah.
The other question here is, how has all of this impacted you in the business? And also, if you want to share like you personally, I'd be curious to know as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, as I mentioned, we knew that, organic traffic and SEO is going to be a part of what we do, right? So obviously there's a number of different attribution methods, and it may be hard to quantify precisely how big of an impact organic has played, but 100% it's been a big part of what we do. And the overall goal is to build essentially a brand, or what we maybe call a mini brand. But you can rank for leads for sale or whatever these keywords are, right? Business databases or whatever for Uplead, right? You can rank for those phrases, but you may not rank forever, right? Google could change something could happen, I don't know, with your article, whatever that may be. You have some control, but you don't have 100% control over if you're going to rank for that phrase forever. But what you do have some control over is your brand. How many people are searching for Uplead every month? So I think over time, the goal was to, if we can get in front of enough eyeballs, and if our platform and our product has enough value, then we'll get enough people every month, and we'll grow the search traffic of our brand phrase for Uplead. And so while initially you want to have some, middle funnel, top of funnel, bottom of funnel phrases that you want to rank for, over time, the goal is to build this brand. And if you build the brand, then that I think that's more valuable over time. And so I think that's what we've done. Like if you look at our search traffic every month, there's more searches in the last month for the phrase Uplead. So over time, as you build that brand, I think that's where you get the biggest impact from this overall kind of organic strategy is building that brand over time. And if done properly, then you can see the ROI there.
So essentially, what you're saying is like using organic, so like your content, basically to rank for your target keywords, so that people find your product and they start using it, and then they come back or they spread the word, essentially to other people that then are going to find you by looking for your brand name.
Yeah, exactly what you said. And we see that because we track every time someone purchases from us, we track how'd you hear about us, and what we've seen is over time, more and more, higher percentage, more and more over time, are saying referral from a friend, from a colleague, etc. Like so, it's essentially a brand play. We're essentially over time. So yeah, I think that's what we've done.
Lastly, let's take a look a little bit more at the how. So how, in your opinion, was our process different from what you experienced before? Anything in particular that you liked in working with us, in what we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, you have your processes down, you have your systems in place. So it's very clear on our end what's expected from us. We just, have to coordinate with you or your team, I don't know, once a week, once every 2 weeks, for some approvals through Google Sheets, whatever that may be. So the process is very streamlined. I mean, previous to working with you, I had different freelancers on Slack or Skype or whatever that may be. It wasn't clear, what we could expect, and the communication was just, here and there type thing. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. So with your services, that's been a big bonus. It's clear what we have to do.
How has your team helped you feel a sense of like momentum, or maybe like the fact that that you have this stuff covered?
Working with your team has been easy. It's you guys have certain processes in place that make it easy for us, so that there's not that much work to do on my side. Yeah, I mean, I don't, again, I don't check the sheet that often, so I'm not even, I am kind of essentially just trusting that the work is being done, and obviously being done, properly.
Okay. How do you think someone else in your shoes should be thinking about working with us?
I would tell them, obviously, if they're doing organic, if they're doing search, then they need to make sure that they're doing everything as far as those three things I mentioned. They need to make sure they're doing the content and it's formatted and written correctly. They need to make sure they're doing the outreach, and that includes, working with someone like yourself. And they need to make sure they're doing the technical SEO, the on-site SEO. So I would say that, it's been a pleasure working with you. And I would highly recommend your services, as long as they understand that your services are one piece of the puzzle, and that, just your services alone without the other pieces done properly isn't going to equal success. And then I would also tell them that, this is a long-term process. Like, especially if you're just getting started with search and SEO, you can't expect to see tremendous results in 1 month or 2 months or even 3 months or more. So if they're committed long-term, and that's something that we knew from the start, like if we're going to do this is a long-term approach. If they're committed long-term, then, they can be successful if they understand the process and they understand it's a long-term process. So I would just say, think, have a long-term mindset. If you're going to do search and do SEO as part of the overall strategy for, your one of your channels for getting new customers, have a long-term, mindset, have a long-term approach. Make sure you cover all your bases and you're doing everything you need to do, not just outreach, but you're doing everything you need to do on the content side, on the SEO side. And if you do that and you're doing it by the book and you're doing it long-term, then over time you will see success. And it may take a long time for you to see a lot of customers or see a big ROI, but it's kind of like this type of a graph where, it may take a while to start and ramp up, but over time, in the long term, if you stay committed, then you can definitely have success with it. And that's happened to us, and that's what we've had.